Dishonor on you, dishonor on your cow. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode number 51 of Movies Are Awesome, the show all about making moonshine. My name is Nathan Pottle, and thank you for joining me today. Here we are at episode number 51. I think that episode 50 last week was a pretty good episode. It was a big success. The Instagram page is a work in progress. We've got some followers over there. I'm hoping to build the community a little more than what it is right now, so just working on getting that a little bit bigger. But for today, I'm talking about the new Pixar movie Onward. I had a chance to see it. Me and my wife went to go watch it, and I'm going to talk about it today, talk about what was good, what was bad, just like how a movie review is supposed to work, you know? So, as usual, if you're not familiar with how I do movie reviews, we'll do non-spoilers first, and then we'll get to a point where I'll give you a big old warning, time for spoilers, and then we'll talk about that. But we'll do non-spoilers first, as always, and then if you haven't seen the movie, you can just stop listening and go watch the movie, and you can come back, listen to the rest of the episode, or whatever. You can do whatever you want. That's how this works. I'll start off, though, doing a little bit of the general story of what this movie is about. So this movie takes place in a world, it's like a suburban fantasy type setting. So there's elves and goblins and trolls and manticores and all kinds of different creatures, but they're living in like a modern setting. So magic has kind of left the world, and they have cars and airplanes and all these different things. They have cell phones, all of our modern conveniences, but just with mythological creatures as our main characters here. And so our main characters are Ian and Barley, I think the other one's name is, and they're voiced by Tom Holland and Chris Pratt. And so they are brothers whose father died when they were very young. Tom Holland's character never even had a chance to meet his dad, and on his 16th birthday, the mom gives them a gift from their dad, and it is a magic wand. Not a wand, it's a staff. It's a wizard staff, and it has the ability to bring their dad back alive for one day, and something goes wrong and they need to go on a quest in order to like fix the spell so that they can spend their one day with their dad. And it's just like this big old adventure. The first thing I want to mention about this movie is Tom Holland and Chris Pratt playing the leads of this movie. I thought they were both very good. This is not either of their first voice roles. Tom Holland was in Spies in Disguise, which came out last year. I did not see it because it looked awful, but it's experience. And then Chris Pratt obviously is in the Lego Movie and the Lego Movie 2, the second part. So this is not something that's new for either of them. I think they both do a really good job. Their voice performances are very good. The animation quality of this movie, to me, it seems like it's not quite on the level of what my expectations are for Pixar. Like, it does not look as good as Toy Story 4 does. I would say it doesn't even look as good as Coco, which came out already 2.5 years ago. So it's more like the way the characters look in The Good Dinosaur. I feel like that's where the level of animation is. So not bad, just not where I expect it to be. And I think part of the reason for that is that at the end of the year, we're getting another Pixar movie, and that is called Soul. And I think that Pixar's big, like, A-team for animation is working on that movie, because I think that one is between Onward and Soul. I think Soul is more of the one that they're really putting their resources behind and really, like, trying to make it as the best movie that it can be. And I'm not saying that they weren't trying to make Onward the best movie that it could be, but I think that between those two, maybe a little bit more focus is going into Soul, and so that's why I feel the animation quality maybe suffers a little bit as a result of that. But that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it and I don't think the movie looks good. I think the movie looks fine, but it just doesn't come up to that standard that Pixar has set for itself. So when Soul comes out, I have very high expectations. I'm so excited for that movie. But talking about Onward some more, one of the easiest ways I can describe this movie is it's like Frozen but for boys, because Frozen is all about Elsa and Anna and their relationship as sisters, and Onward is all about Ian and Barley. I'm pretty sure his name is Barley. It's either way, it's about these two brothers, and so Frozen is all about sisters, and Onward is all about brothers. And so I think that that is a really good thing, like that they made a movie like this, because like there's a lot of focus on like girl power and yeah and all this stuff, and I feel like maybe like while that stuff is all good and like we should be celebrating women and all of that, I feel like maybe like relationships between like two guys, like the bonds of brothers, is maybe hasn't had a lot of focus lately. So I'm really glad to see something like this, especially when we get later into the movie where a lot of the scenes between the two brothers are very emotional, and they lash out at each other every now and then, or they tell each other some deeper, darker secrets, which I'm going to talk about in the spoiler section. But there's this dynamic to their relationship that shows all of the aspects of having a brother and being a brother, and how those things can affect you and change your life, right? So I'm really pleased with the story direction that this movie went in. And speaking of some of the story elements, the older brother, is it Barley or is it Bailey? Okay, I gotta look it up. Here we go. IMDb. Onward. So is it Barley or is it Bailey? It is Barley. What a strange name. Like Bailey is a name I understand, but Barley is kind of a weirder out there name. In any case, Barley is the older brother. I think he's supposed to be like 19 or 20, and Ian is the younger brother. It takes place on his 16th birthday. But Barley is really big into this game. Can't remember what they call it, but it's pretty much Dungeons and Dragons. This world's version of Dungeons and Dragons. So, but they do it in an interesting way, because it's not like Dungeons and Dragons like how we know it. It incorporates a lot of their world's real history. So this game is all like historically accurate. So he knows everything about like the history of magic and all these different creatures. So when it becomes time for the two brothers to go on this journey with their dad, who's only just a set of legs, because the spell didn't bring him back to life properly, when it comes time to go on this quest, Barley knows everything there is to know about like magic and the world that was before, and they're able to navigate all of the clues and things that they need to do in order to get a gem to put back into the wizard staff, and then fully bring their dad back to life so that they can speak with him. So as someone for myself, I play Dungeons and Dragons every week, Tuesday nights. There are 3 guys who come over to my house, and we play D&D for 3 or 4 hours, depending on how we're feeling and the momentum that we've got going on. So as someone who plays that game a lot, I really, really enjoyed that aspect of the movie. I felt like it was something that definitely spoke to me. I like playing D&D a whole lot, especially the game that I have going on right now. It's progressing really well, and I'm happy with my characters' journeys. Like, so I'm running the game, and so my players all have characters, and the journeys that they're going on I'm really pleased with, and like the whole story arc, the way everything is unfolding, I'm very pleased with how that game is going. Not that that is relevant to how good of a movie Onward is, so why don't I circle back and keep talking about this movie. So aside from D&D, there's some decent humor to this movie, and we have some good side characters. There's one character who's a police officer and a centaur, and I don't really like his character very much. I find him very annoying and grating. Like, all of the time that he spent on screen, just don't care about him as much. Their mom I kind of like, but as far as side characters go, I think the character of the Manticore, which is voiced by Octavia Spencer, I think her character is probably the best of the side characters in this movie. But even that being said, the side characters don't have a lot of play in this movie. It is pretty focused on the two brothers here and the journey that they're going on. So, like, even the characters that I don't like, they're not in the movie very much. So I don't have to worry about it a lot. It's not something that like is a make or break for this movie for me. Now, I want to circle back to the world that they're living in. So this is a suburban fantasy is the best way I can describe it, and I want to just talk about the execution of how this all works and like does it feel believable. And in order to do that, I have to draw a parallel to another movie that tried to do the exact same thing. It is a movie called Bright. It is a Netflix original film. It stars Will Smith and some other guy, can't remember his name. And that movie is possibly one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It is very, very bad. So the premise of that is that there are magical creatures and humans like living side by side, and one orc character wants to be a police officer. And so the humans versus orcs is intended to be like parallels to racism, and it's a very on the nose. Very, very, very on the nose. Like there's no beating around the bush about that. There's no subtext. There's nothing. There's no mistaking what that movie's about. It's also not very good. The plot doesn't make sense. Everything is just kind of all over the place. But in Onward, they have a little monologue at the beginning, like a prologue type deal, like kind of explaining like the magic and how it left the world, and then it's coming back. And I think that that is really, really good in the way that everything kind of ties in together at the end. So as far as the execution of this fictional world and how everything works, I think it works for the most part. There's a couple things that maybe I'm just like, oh well, like would this happen? Do we need to do this? And the way they explain how magic kind of has left the world because modern conveniences kind of negate the need for magic. So I think that is a really interesting way to look at it, that we don't need magic because we have electricity. We don't need you to light a fire because we have gas in our homes. So things like that. So I feel like compared to other movies that have tried to do concepts like this, Onward is probably a far better execution than something like Bright. I do not recommend watching Bright. If you've seen it and you like it somehow, please let me know, because I was just blown away by how disappointing that movie was. It's actually crazy. But actually, to keep talking about like Bright and Onward comparisons, I was saying how Bright is very on the nose. I think Onward's story can maybe be a little bit on the nose with the way like certain characters say their dialogue, or the way things are written. I think it can be a little bit on the nose. But because the story is so much about the brothers' interactions, I feel like there's not really any other way to do it. I'm not forgiving it. I'm just saying that I'm not exactly sure how you would do things differently so it's a little less on the nose, but still like continues the story, right? And because it's a little bit on the nose like that, the story is a little bit predictable, especially when you get closer to the end. You kind of know what's going to happen, how it's going to play out. There are other Pixar movies that are like that too, and I really, really enjoy those movies. Like, I don't always need to have a surprise ending that I didn't see coming with something like Knives Out. I did not predict what was going to happen in Knives Out, but in Onward, I definitely did know exactly what was going to happen. But that's fine. As long as the movie as a whole can stand up on its own and the predictability isn't something that becomes a detriment to the film, then it's okay. I don't think it's a huge detriment to the film. You're still going to enjoy it. You're still going to like it. You're just going to know what's going to happen. I just have a couple more things to talk about before I get into the spoiler section here. Is Pixar movies are generally very emotional. So the big question is this movie going to make you cry? I don't think so. I did tear up a little bit at one part in the movie, but there were no like tears flowing down my face. Like, Onward is not Coco. It is not emotional in the exact same way. It has emotion to it and it's powerful, but I don't think it's as like heart-wrenching as something like Coco or other Pixar movies like Toy Story 3, or like the emotional gravitas of WALL-E or Ratatouille, or even Up. Oh my goodness, Up is a heart-wrencher of a movie. So when you compare it to other Pixar movies, I don't think it measures up to Pixar's like top standard. I think it's more along the lines of something like Brave or The Good Dinosaur, although I do think that Onward is better than Brave and The Good Dinosaur, but it's not quite as good as something like Wall-E or Ratatouille or Coco or the Toy Story movies or anything like that. It's kind of in that middle ground, you know? But all in all, I'm going to say that Onward is a good movie. I enjoyed it. I recommend that you go watch it if you're interested in seeing it all. I would say that you're gonna like it probably if you think you're going to, and that's gonna be my spoiler-free review of the movie here. So if you have not seen Onward, go check it out on my recommendation. Then you can come back. We can talk about spoilers. Let's have a conversation. I actually don't have a ton of notes here in the spoiler section, so we'll probably get through them pretty quick here. I don't think today's episode is going to be super long. And I think the big thing that I need to talk about right off the bat, I was saying that the story is a little bit predictable, and like for sure that in the end, Ian doesn't get to meet his dad, and Barley does get to meet his dad. And when they set it up that Barley never said goodbye to his dad, and Ian never met his dad at all, ever, you can definitely see that it's going to get to a place where only one of them is able to meet him, and Ian is going to let Barley go and like meet his dad. And I think that that's even more evident like from the very beginning of the movie. Ian is making down like notes of what he wants to do with his dad, and as he's like making this list, like I was reading the things that he was writing down, I was like, okay, like he's going to be doing all of these things with his brother, and that's what this is going to be about. And that's fine. Like I figured it out, and I don't think it was something that they were trying to hide. I think it was something that was just like meant to be important, you know? It was important for Ian's character to realize that like having a dad is great and it's super important, but there are other ways that you can like learn and like progress in life, you know? Like his brother was there for him forever, for his whole life. And going on this adventure caused him to realize that and realize the special bond and relationship that they really do have. I really like when they flash back to when they're kids because they're just so adorable. But having the two brothers be reminded of that and learning to trust each other again because they've kind of grown apart in the last little while, and like getting to that point of the end of the movie. And I find it especially powerful that we see the dad come back to life and have his interaction with Barley from the point of view of Ian. Now he's like trapped underneath this rubble and he can only see like a glimpse of it. So like us being apart from that, I think that's super important. Like Barley being reunited with his dad for that moment is such a personal moment for him, and like overcoming a hurdle, like this regret that he has as a child when his dad died and he was too scared to say goodbye to his dad. I think that that's something that like needed to be just between them. Whatever it was that was said is between them. We don't need to know. And I find that really powerful. Like most of this movie's spoiler stuff is really kind of built on the crux of this third and final act, like everything just kind of coming to a head. The dragon coming to life, like the concrete dragon, that was pretty fun. And seeing Ian like use all of his magic that he learned throughout the movie, like in this battle with the dragon, I found that pretty fun. It was a fun action sequence, and like him running around in the air and like shooting stuff and using the little splinter from his hand to create a new not a wand, it's a staff. I keep wanting to call it a magic wand, but it's a wizard staff. So doing things like that, I really liked it a lot. I liked the magical aspect of this movie. I liked the Dungeons and Dragons aspect of this movie. I liked the brotherly bond of this movie. This like it's just a good movie. Now it's not like top tier Pixar. I will be expecting like top tier Pixar out of Soul when it comes out later this year, but Onward isn't that, and Onward doesn't need to be that. It's just a good movie about two brothers. And that's what it is. That is pretty much it here. I'm wrapping it up. It is definitely a shorter episode today, but that's fine. That's just how it is, right? So before I close up the show today, I'm just wanting to know, have you seen Onward? If you have, I would love to know what you thought about it. You can reach out to me on social media. You can find me on Twitter at PodleNathan, and you can find me on Instagram at Movies Are Awesome Podcast. All of those are linked in the description below, so don't have to worry about that. If you haven't done so, you can also feel free to subscribe to the show. You can do so on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and a whole bunch of other places. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and if you have nothing else to do, go watch more movies.